If you thought the disappearance of Maura Murray was confusing enough, welcome to a maelstrom of names, faces, and dark theories that will have you tilting your chair back, sipping your coffee, and wondering, who's behind it, anyway? The story begins not with a new lead, nor with a mysterious witness who appears out of nowhere, but with a list. The list is not in the official police file. No, if you ask, they'll just laugh and say no comment, but in forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels, where the true crime community has been toiling for years, gathering bits and pieces of information, piecing together details, and labeling them potential suspects. And then, like an impromptu press conference, the names start to roll out. Some knew Maura. Some just happened to be near the scene. Some people know someone who knows Maura, and in this case, trust me, an indirect connection is enough to make netizens turn on professional investigation mode. Hello everyone, I'm 2D Crime Files, and this is part 4 of the Maura Murray mystery documentary series. In the previous part, we were swimming in the sea of information about strange calls. But today, we're going to touch the hottest part, the dark theories and suspect list that has the entire true crime community buzzing. If you're holding popcorn, hold on tight because this part is not only exciting, but also a little spicy. That day, the weather was colder than usual, but the true crime community was hotter than ever. On the main forum, a post titled, "Who's Really Behind the Maura Murray Case?" appeared, along with a list of 5 names. No pictures, no concrete evidence, just brief descriptions like, met Maura before she disappeared, appeared near the scene, had suspicious behavior. But just like that, the online community immediately exploded. Everyone rushed to read, examine, analyze, as if they were watching a new episode of a Netflix series, but this time there was no director to explain to them. In the comment section, the speed of replies was so fast that you could finish typing a sentence, and there were already 20 new opinions. Some people were excited, as if they had just found a golden clue. Others were more cautious, reminding each other that this could just be a baseless rumor. But regardless of which side they were on, everyone was drawn into this new vortex of names. What is worth mentioning is that, among those names, at least 2 people have quite complicated personal records. One was arrested for violent behavior a few years ago, another has a history of debt and is involved in shady relationships. A humorous interlude. Honestly, reading the file is more dramatic than reading a bank loan application. At least there's an element of mystery here. The news spread so quickly that within hours, Facebook groups dedicated to Maura's case had copied the entire list, adding photos from obscure sources, with sensational captions like, "Is this the guy we're looking for?" or "Eyes can't lie." On YouTube, several amateur investigative channels also took advantage of the opportunity, immediately releasing videos analyzing each character, using slow motion to zoom in on suspicious moments in old clips. One humorous host even added, "Zooming in like this, you can count the hairs missing from your left eyebrow." While netizens were excited, the Murray family received the news with caution. Fred, with years of experience dealing with rumors, knows that a name being released can lead to a series of consequences, from press hounding to harassing phone calls. But at the same time, he also knows that sometimes, in that sea of rumors, there can still be a piece of the truth hidden. Official investigations are different. They do not easily confirm or deny information without enough evidence. The police representative only made a brief statement. "We take all information from the public, but cannot comment on the list of individuals." This sentence, if translated into internet community language, means neither confirm nor deny. Understand yourself. And so the wave of speculation became even more intense. One forum member even created a diagram connecting the suspects, like the red pin boards in investigative films, with photos, notes, and tangled arrows. Someone joked, "If the FBI was short of staff, we would probably just invite this whole group." Interestingly, one of the characters on the list took the initiative to appear on social media, posting a post claiming his innocence, along with the sentence, "I have nothing to do with this case. Don't drag me into the drama." The result? His post immediately became the center of the drama, with hundreds of comments asking questions, even looking back at the details he accidentally revealed. The circle of suspicion just kept spinning. Each day, there was a new layer of information. Whether true or false, no one could be sure. In that context, part 4 of this series is when we dig deeper into each name, each detail, and each hypothesis, not to label the culprit for anyone, but to understand how a case can become a maze when the human element and the power of the internet come into play. And this is the day the suspect comes. If in the previous part, we witnessed the day when the first names were released like an explosion on the online community, then in this chapter, let's go deeper into the dark corridors of the case, where each face, each story, and each secret lurks in the shadows. The first person on the list is a man who is referred to by his initials to protect his identity, but anyone familiar with the area can guess. He lives in a town less than 10 minutes drive from the scene of the crime, and was seen walking along the road where Maura disappeared that very night. When questioned by the police, he said he was just going to buy something and was on his way home. The problem is, the store, he said, had closed an hour before he appeared at that location. In addition, an unofficial witness claimed to have seen his car parked on the side of the road, lights off, near the wooded area, and of course, in the world of amateur sleuthing, that alone is enough to generate hundreds of pages of discussion. But then, as with everything else in this case, there was no concrete evidence to charge him, and the police kept their "we're still investigating" response. The second person on the list was someone who went to school with Maura. Their relationship was unclear, but there were rumors that they had a falling out. An old photo of the two at a party was found online, and suddenly netizens became experts in analyzing body language. Look, Maura is standing more than a meter away from him. They must not be close. One comment said, "No, I saw that. Look, there's definitely something going on," another retorted. A funny voiceover chimed in. If the FBI lacked psychologists, they could just hire a few hundred internet commentators. The third person was a special case, a truck driver who regularly passed through the area at night. He claimed to have seen a female figure that looked like Maura standing next to his car, but when pressed, the details of his story changed slightly between answers. Some believed he was a real witness. Others thought he was making it up for attention. And of course, the online community dug into his past, finding several traffic violations and turning them into red flags. The fourth person, and perhaps the most controversial, was a local emergency services worker. His presence on the list sparked debate, as he was one of the first on the scene after Maura's car was discovered. Many thought this gave him access to Maura or was hiding something, while others argued that it was unreasonable and unfair to suspect the rescue workers. Finally, there was the fifth person, a man virtually unknown until his name surfaced in an anonymous post, alleging that he had boasted of knowing what happened to Maura. When questioned, he denied it, saying it was a rumor. But as usual, once a name appeared, it lingered in the memories of those following the case. The strange thing was that, while the reliability of these suspects varied, they all had one thing in common. They could not definitively say where they were or what they were doing that night. And this was fertile ground for dark theories to sprout. Forums began to create informal dossiers, compiling photos, personal information, relationships, and even random quotes. Some even created a scale of suspicion, from 1, not relevant, to 10, very likely. The police didn't endorse the charts, but they couldn't stop them from spreading. And from these charts, the side stories began to emerge. Someone saw one of the suspects walking down a deserted street in the early hours of the morning, or someone heard Maura arguing with a strange man a few days before her disappearance. Though these stories were never confirmed, they crept into the minds of the audience, making each suspect's face even more hazy, half true, half false. Here, truth and rumor blend like mist on a cold night. You know something's there, but you can't put your finger on it. And with each face in the shadows, the question remains, are they a witness, an innocent accused, or as lists of suspects began to circulate on forums, social media, and podcasts devoted to the Maura Murray investigation, the case became less about who was who and more about a fog of theories. Imaginary pieces pieced together from facts, half-believed accounts, and sometimes the imaginations of thousands of people at once. While in the previous chapter, the suspects were revealed like chess pieces, Here the chessboard began to turn into a maze, where each path led to a different scenario. And strangely, all of them had something reasonable enough to make people unable to ignore. The first theory that took off was the acquaintance betrayal. This was the idea that Maura, in the confusion of the cold night, saw a familiar face appear near the scene. The initial relief turned to trust, and she agreed to go with him, only to disappear without a trace. Those who believed in this theory immediately set about drawing up a relationship map. They took the names of the suspects, connected each one to Maura through friends, colleagues, neighbors, and highlighted the shady connections in red. One group even created a scorecard, ranging from 1, likely innocent, to 10, extremely suspicious, and updated it weekly like a football scoreboard. The narrator jokingly interjected, "It feels like I'm watching Idle Suspect, where the higher the vote, the more dangerous." The second theory took the story to a colder tone, victim of a random predator. In this way, it didn't matter who Maura was, she just had to be in the right place at the right time, and the sights of a dangerous wanderer. Those who believe this theory point out that the road where Maura stopped was rarely traveled, but there was a turnoff that led into deep woods, a place where she would disappear in a matter of minutes. Some forum members have consulted satellite maps, marking areas that have never been thoroughly searched, and have argued that all it would take is an abandoned house, a hole, or a truck parked in the right place to disappear forever. The more they discuss it, the more chilling it becomes, and accounts of similar disappearances in other remote areas make it harder to ignore. The third theory has a strong conspiracy tinge. Someone in the law enforcement knows more than they are letting on. Proponents of this approach often point to small details omitted from official reports, gaps in time, or vague explanations given at press conferences. Some have pointed out that some key pieces of evidence, such as the details of the scene when the car was found, were never made public. They argue that this was not an oversight, but a deliberate attempt to cover up a certain link. Critics argue that this is simply a way to protect the confidentiality of the investigation, but once the seed of doubt has been planted, it will grow no matter who tries to remove it. The group is very methodical, collecting all the statements made by the police over the years, comparing every word, every date to find inconsistencies, and any small discrepancy is considered a golden clue. The fourth theory, and the most controversial, is that Maura disappeared of her own accord. Evidence has been gathered from the days leading up to the incident. Emails to lecturers, mysterious phone calls, text messages to friends, and personal information that suggests she may have been under great stress. Some believe that Maura wanted to start over somewhere else, away from all the trouble, and that her disappearance was intentional. But critics are quick to point out that no one would leave behind their wallet, phone, ID, and all the essentials if they really wanted to start a new life. They argue that this idea equates the victim with a runaway, and it dilutes the search effort. Still, this theory persists because in every disappearance, there is always a small chance that the missing person left their old life voluntarily. Finally, there is the chain of unfortunate events theory, a hybrid of the above scenarios. According to this, Maura could have left her car to seek help, encountered an unexpected situation such as getting lost, falling, or coming into contact with a stranger, and from there things spiraled out of control. This is the hardest scenario to prove because it does not require a clear villain, but only relies on a chain of coincidences leading to tragedy. Believers in this theory often see the case as a tragedy that didn't need a conspiracy, just a mistake at the worst possible time. The point is, these theories are not mutually exclusive. On the contrary, they overlap, blend, and are constantly reborn in many versions. On the forum, there are posts thousands of words long that combine the acquaintance betrayal theory with the conspiracy of the authorities to cover up or blend the random victim with the ironic chain of events. Each time a new theory appears, it doesn't erase the old one, but rather adds another layer to the multi-layered cake, and the people following the case then get caught up in tasting each layer, no matter how difficult to swallow. But deep inside, despite the sometimes ironic tone of the narrative, one still feels a chill. Each hypothesis, whether built from imagination or from real data, reflects a very real fear. that a young girl can disappear into everyday life, leaving no solid trace, and all we can do is tell the story over and over again, hoping that somewhere, among these layers of hypotheses, there exists. If you thought the Maura Murray case was being investigated by cops and professional detectives alone, you were underestimating the power of the internet, specifically the power of thousands of people with keyboards, Wi-Fi, and a burning belief that they could solve a 21-year-old mystery. In the days after the list of suspects and the dark theories exploded, social media became an information battlefield. On Reddit, thousands of words of posts analyzed every move, every photo, every word of the characters in the case. On Facebook, closed groups began to spring up, reserved for approved members, sounding like a secret service club, but in reality, often just groups of people sharing screenshots of messages and discussing them. One particularly popular group called itself the Shadow Watchers. The team works in near shifts, ensuring that someone is always online to keep track of any new information on the case. They create an Excel spreadsheet listing suspects' names, dates of appearance, known evidence, and even assign them a suspicion-level score, which they update weekly. Every time someone on the list changes their social media status, posts a new post, or even changes their profile picture, the team snaps it, stores it, and analyzes it. If the CIA were recruiting like this, your file would have been there by the time you posted your first photo with a cat and dog filter, the narrator quips. But the online community doesn't stop at social media. They also dig into public data sources, court records, property reports, phone books. They dig up seemingly innocuous information and piece it into the bigger picture. Sometimes the result is a new lead, but sometimes it's a dead end, or worse, it leads to the harassment of innocent people. The problem with the power of the online community is that it has no official filter. Anyone can contribute information without verification, and when hundreds of people share it, it can easily become truth in the eyes of the public. There are stories that go viral so strongly that some of the people involved have to close their personal accounts to avoid being bothered. There are even cases where completely unrelated people are mistaken for suspects, simply because their appearance matches a vague description given by a witness. The online community is clearly divided into two camps. The first believes that collective power will find the truth, that if enough people scrutinize, no detail can escape. They cite other cases that have been solved thanks to citizen input as proof that they are on the right track. The other camp is more cautious, believing that too many amateur investigators can distort information, make it difficult for the authorities, and worse, ruin the chance of finding the truth. But regardless of the controversy, it is undeniable that the heat from the online community has kept the Maura Murray case alive in the public mind for 2 decades. Every new piece of information, no matter how small, immediately spreads across platforms, leading to a wave of comments, speculation, and no small amount of internal drama among amateur investigative groups. One memorable story is when a member of the Shadow Watchers claimed to have found a golden clue, a photo of a car that looked like Maura's, deep in the woods. The group immediately got excited, drew a map of the route, and some even planned to drive there that very night. The result? It was just a car that had been abandoned for many years, unrelated to the case. But instead of being disappointed, the story was told over and over again as a humorous anecdote and was considered a testament to the community's willingness to rush into the dark spirit. Interestingly, it is these stories that help keep viewers interested. Amidst the intense analysis, a little humor unintentionally became the glue that connected the members. They not only shared information, but also shared moments of laughter because of their slightly excessive enthusiasm. But the power of the online community also created invisible pressure on the suspects, or those considered suspects. Some had to move, some lost their jobs, some fell into depression. This is the dark side of collective investigation, when the line between searching for the truth and invading privacy becomes blurred. However, if we ignore these consequences, it cannot be denied that thanks to the wide network of suspects, many small details that the police may have missed are brought to light. A hastily taken photo, a seemingly meaningless sentence, or even the time someone changed the license plate. All were recorded and kept. It is this persistence that makes the case still attractive to this day. And if you ask people in the online community why they continue after all these years, the answer is often, because she hasn't been found, because this story isn't over. And perhaps it is this belief that keeps this network of suspicion going, despite the passage of time and 21 years. That number sounds like just enough time for all the wounds to heal, for all the stories to sink into oblivion. But in the case of Maura Murray, 21 years is just proof of a painful reality. The darkness is still there, covering everything, not retreating an inch. The coldness of that fateful evening still lingers in every line of discussion, every argument, every new post that appears on the true crime forums. With each passing year, the witnesses grow older, their memories fade, but the questions remain as still as if frozen. Where did Maura go? Who was the last person to see her? And why did it all end up on a remote road with an abandoned car on the side of the road? Looking back at the entire journey, from the first call to the police, to the vague press conferences, to the suspect list, to the hundreds of theories that have piled up, you realize that each piece, sharp or fuzzy, leads to a blind alley. There were moments when the online community seemed to have touched the truth, a photo, a witness, a detail that had never been seen before, only to have it all vanish like morning mist. Some have likened the case to a giant maze, where each new turn leads you back to where you started. For more than 2 decades, Maura's family has kept a beacon of hope alive. They held vigils, hung posters, spoke to the press, and repeatedly asked anyone who knew anything to come forward. But that hope wasn't just theirs. It was a community's hope. Everyone involved in this story, whether they are journalists, amateur detectives, or casual spectators, has a desire to know the truth. The difference is in how they search. Some patiently dig through old files, some dive into crime scene investigations, some dig into every interview, every map, every Google Street View photo. And then there's still dark spots that no one, not even the most passionate, can illuminate. There are questions that only Maura could answer if she were still alive. There are details that only the perpetrator would know, and he chooses to keep silent. That silence, over time, does not weaken but becomes heavier, weighing down on every line, every narration, every look when the case is mentioned. But paradoxically, it is that darkness that keeps the story alive. It is said that in true crime, when a case remains mysterious, it will continue to haunt. And for Maura, the haunting has extended beyond the community to millions around the world, people who never knew her, who never set foot in New Hampshire, but who feel like they're searching for an old friend. So why, 21 years later, are there still no answers? Maybe a crucial detail was left out from the start. Maybe the key witnesses are gone, or their memories have been eroded by time. Or maybe this was a case where the killer, if there was one, was so calculated, leaving so few clues that no one could ever find out. But whatever the cause, one thing is clear. All the questions remain unanswered. And perhaps the scariest part is not that we don't know, but that we likely never will. In the fog of uncertainty, there are still small rays of light. The persistence of investigators, the persistent memory of the online community, the family's belief that one day the story will be concluded. But until that happens, the Maura Murray case will remain here, like a darkness that refuses to retreat. And when you think you know enough, that there is nothing more to discover, remember, there's still questions that have never been answered, and there's still clues that have never been published. Thank you for joining us on this journey of Part 4. But this is not the end. In the next part, Maura Murray Mystery, Unanswered Questions Remain, True Crime Documentary, Part 5, we will delve into those very questions. What secrets are lying dormant, waiting to be revealed? What pieces of the puzzle are still hidden in the dark? Subscribe, turn on notifications, and prepare, because we are about to enter the final chapter of this mystery.